Hi, fifth grade, it's Mrs. Cobble. And this week we're going to be dividing fractions. The good news is we did this when we were at school, but this will be a good reminder to help you remember all the different steps and what we did to actually solve these types of problems. So leave your volume on the entire time because you'll hear me talk through the different problems. All right, so first thing, if you remember when we were dividing fractions, sometimes we would start with a fraction like this, and other times we would start with a whole number. So first of all, I'm going to go through how you would work a problem when you're starting with a fraction. Okay, so for example, if you take 1/2 divided by 4, this is how I would draw it out. So 1/2, that's this first number, whatever is in this spot is what you're starting with. So I'm starting with 1/2. You'll see I had shaded that in blue. And then I'm splitting it or separating, dividing into 4 sections. So I separated this part into 4 sections. So this is a visual that represents this problem. This is a number line. Sometimes the number lines are nice on these type of problems to help you see. So here, again, I'm starting with a 1/2. That's why I drew my number line and labeled it with a 1/2. So my second step here is I separated it into 4 equal sections. So that's where I get these orange lines. Notice, yes, there's only 3 orange lines, but there's 4 equal sections here. So when I take 1/2 and divide it into 4 sections, it equals 1/8. So I can look here, this section right here represents 1/8 of the total piece. Right here, this section, I'm left with 1/8. So that's how it all relates back to each other. All right, so the next one, this is basically a similar problem, but I wanted to give you a chance to do it. So 1/4 divided by 2. If you'll grab some paper, I'm just going to give you a minute to kind of think through it, and then I'll go through it with you. So I'm going to give you a minute to work through it. 1/4 divided by 2. Okay, so now if you need a couple more minutes, go ahead and pause it and then you can replay. So now to go through this problem, this is how I would work it. Now, I keep doing a model like this and then a number line. You don't always need to do both of them. I'm just trying to always show you back both ways. So, okay, starting with a 4th, because that's my first number here, that's where this blue box came from. So before I put the orange lines, I just shaded a 1/4 of something. So then, okay, I'm going to split my 4th into 2 parts. That's where this line right here comes from. The 4th is split. If this was a 4th, I had a 1/4 of a candy bar. Here it is. I split it between 2 people. So I would get this piece. The other person would get this piece. These lines are here, but that's just showing you how you're splitting each 4th into 2 pieces. Remember, we really only had a 1/4 of that candy bar to start with. Okay, over here, your number line. So I'm starting with a 4th. That's where you see I labeled a 4th. I'm splitting it into 2 pieces. Okay, again, that's my candy bar right there. That's how much I have. I didn't have a whole candy bar, just a 4th. I split it into 2 pieces. I'm going to get it this much, an 1/8 of the candy bar, and the other person will get an 1/8. So you'll see right here I worked it out. Okay? All right, so now we're going to think about, real life situation. I started talking about a candy bar in the last slide. This is just another example of how it may sound. Maria has 1/2 a foot of string. She cuts it into 4 equal pieces. What fractional part of the original string is represented by each piece? Okay, so Maria has 1/2 of a foot to start with. So half is where I start. Remember, I keep saying what I start with. Here I'm starting with a 1/2. So then she cuts it into 4 equal pieces. So I'm dividing by 4. Okay, so pretend this part's not here yet. I would come in here, do my models like I did on the last slides. That's where I'm going to get my answer. This problem right here, we actually just worked, but this is just thinking about how it would sound in a word problem or real life. Okay, so now we're going to start with a whole number instead of a fraction. So this time we're starting with 4 and we're dividing it into halves. So 4 divided by 1/2 equals something. So now, again, remember, what we start with is this first number. Okay, so now we're starting with 4. So you can tell I went down and drew the 4 boxes here, here, these 4 boxes. Then I split each of them into a halves. So half, 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 half. So that's what it would look like with that model. A number line is very similar. Okay, I started with 4. That's where that comes in. If I split it into halves, those are my orange lines. So 4 divided by 1/2 equals 8. So basically what that means is if I have 4 pizzas and I'm splitting the pizzas into halves, so if these are my pizzas, rectangular pizzas, then 8 people are going to get a half of a pizza. That's what it would sound like. Again, you can tell my thinking down here. 1/2 goes into 4 8 times. All right, so your turn. Kind of like we did last time, I'll give you a minute, but if you need to pause to give you more time, that's perfectly fine. So 2 divided by 1/3 equals something. I'll give you a minute. Okay, pause if you need to give yourself more time because I know I didn't give you much. If you're ready, if you will continue to the next slide and we will look at the answer. So 2 divided by 1/3, I started with my 2 boxes here. I split them into thirds. I end up with 6. So 1/3 goes into 2 6 times. My number line, you could have done it either way. You didn't have to do it both ways. I went all the way to 2 because that's what I'm starting with. And then I split it into thirds. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 thirds in 2. So if we're talking cakes, if I have 2 cakes and I'm making pieces of cake that are a third of the cake, 6 people would get a piece. All right, so one last thing to kind of think of real life, what does this sound like? Maria has 2 cakes. She gives everyone 1/4 of a cake. How many pieces of cake is she able to cut? All right, so here we have 2 cakes. Those are my boxes. She gives everyone 1/4. That's my orange lines. 8 people get a piece of cake. Okay? Again, the biggest thing to remember is that what are you starting with? Think about what are you starting with? Write that. Are you separating that out? That determines your operation if you're dividing, which this week we are. And then whatever your fractional amount is. Okay? I hope this helps, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Bye.